Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 599.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about something that I know to be foundational, pivotal. Dare I say your business will not make it unless you learn to adapt to new strategies, and particularly this strategy that we're going to talk about today. Now, I've built that up, right? And you have a high expectation, which means we better deliver. I think today's guest will not only be able to deliver, I'm going to go so far as to say she's going to over-deliver for you and I, because here's the thing. When you're out there, you're trying to build your product. You're trying to build, your customer base and awareness, and we've got so much work to do. Did you know that there's another way to make that happen? Possibly an easier way to make that happen, and definitely a more fun way to make that happen if all you did was build a community. And I know you say to me, Jay, but I have a Facebook group. I have a community already. And I say to you, listen, because we are going to have some fun today, because there are some inside secrets that you will begin to understand and most importantly, be able to execute on. I have with me today none other than Gina Bianchini, the founder and CEO of Mighty Networks. And what you must understand is that she is mission driven. And part of that mission is to help you and I build a community around what we do, what we're passionate about, and most importantly, make it easy so that it doesn't feel like work. I can tell you firsthand, first person knowledge, that I am overly excited about the changes that she's been able to help happen here at CashFlow Diary. But enough about that. Let's listen to Gina. So what does that mean? I need you to get ready to listen, to learn, and to love none other than Gina Bianchini. Gina, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm inspired by that. Like, I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to go.
Yes, good. Because I think everyone else is ready to go. Because right now, I just said something that they weren't expecting. I mentioned the word community and connection with their business. And there's probably a gap still. And we're going to fill it. But before we go there, this being the first time you're here, I have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else. You ready?
Yes.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Hulk. You get the idea.
Yep.
Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, I can imagine myself flying around town, probably wearing a cape, and yes, saving customers one sale at a time. However, as a superhero, think about it. Spider-Man. He had a beginning. There was a time he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing, taking some photos, hoping to take a girl out on a date. One day he gets bit by a spider, discovers, I've got a superhuman ability. And now he has to choose between good or evil and how he's going to use that power. So my question to you as follows. Before Ning, what many people know you for, before Mighty Networks, before everything that people know you for today, before all of the publications and everything, what we want to know is, who is Gina Bianchini?
No pressure, Jay.
I feel none.
No
I feel absolutely zero.
All. As you were talking, the thing that I am so grateful for that really was the seed to what ultimately has become my mission, my work, the thing I love to do, is I grew up in a time and a place in Cupertino, California, and was born into a family of incredibly curious people. So my father had a passion for old cars and antique cars and was a school teacher. He taught high school history, and yet, would save his money and was very frugal, I might add, but would save his money so he could actually restore old cars. And my parents had met in college, and my mom was from Southern California. My dad was from Northern California, and we grew up in Cupertino where he had grown up. The son of small business owners. My grandparents had owned a nursery when Cupertino, California was all orchards. Wow. And my mom is just one of the most curious people that I know, and has been, I think, probably from day one. And so that manifested itself in, she raised guinea pigs. We then raised rabbits. And she was literally, I never caught my mom without a book in her hand, and still is this way to this day. And there was just always something new to learn, always something interesting to explore. And I was even joking about it this morning in a meeting, is the number of things that my mom as one individual has explored through her life, whether it's around spiritual practices or diet, not diets from she wants to lose weight, but diets in terms of she went macrobiotic in the 80s, when nobody was macrobiotic. But my mom was macrobiotic in the 80s. She's converted to multiple religions. And just, again, it all comes from this innate curiosity. And this appreciation for sort of the world. And so what was interesting is, my parents were pretty different people. One was more concrete than the other. But having been exposed to that kind of curiosity, fast forward 20 years, and it was sort of the beginning of, it was the end of the .com, era, and the beginning of the social era. And I just happened to be friends and sitting in the right place. Again, all starting because I grew up in Cupertino and then ended up leaving, going to Washington, D.C. when I was in high school, and realizing that the East Coast was cold and rained in the spring and snowed in the winter. And I just didn't understand it. So I came back to California, and I was like, all right, I got to go somewhere in California to college. And ideally I can play field hockey, which is an East Coast sport, and meet a lot of people from around the country. So the crazy thing about being from Cupertino, California, is there's 2 schools within driving distance of you that you can actually go to. And I went to one of them, and my sister went to the other. And that's, Stanford and Cal. So, or Berkeley. And so fast forward, and it was the beginning of the social era. And I had one friend who was starting LinkedIn, and I had another friend who was actually, the same friend was also invested in this new thing called Facebook. And I had a third friend come to me and basically be like, Gina, let's start a new platform that could give people a way to create social apps and websites and apps the way that that people have been able to create websites. And so being kind of a normal human being, or maybe not so normal, I don't know. But basically I was like, okay, that sounds cool. And that was what happened with Ning. And we created a platform for people to create their own social networks. And almost overnight, we went from, our prior version had not really worked all that well, but this notion of being able to drag and drop different features like photos and videos and profiles and blogging and all of these things in one place under your brand for your purpose really took off overnight. And really what I was exposed to in that experience was the sheer volume of what happens when you connect people around, around the country, around the world, around interests and passions and goals. And the reason I shared my story about my parents and, even just my own interest in I was a kid, I raised rabbits and was a race walker. Like no one's a race walker. It's like a sport that not a lot of people doing. I was super into it for a while. And then I realized I was I like team sports better, but that's a different story. So I'm exposed all of a sudden with Ning to all of these people doing super cool stuff, whether it was around, bringing hip hop fans together, or whether it was around navigating diabetes and type 1 diabetes, whether it was for political causes, or one of my favorites was something called the Offbeat Bride Tribe. And it was basically all of these like Doc Martin wearing, Irish friendship wearing, cruelty-free diamond ladies who were just like super badass, but like, we're still going to get married. They were just going to get married their way.
Absolutely.
So there were all of these, like we had like the Harry Potter fans, we had like the official Twilight Network. And the common thread in all of this, Jay, is people are awesome. People are awesome. And when you can bring people together around an interest, a passion, a goal, a program, a lifestyle, like really how I think it's evolved and morphed into my own understanding of what a community can do in 2020 is mastering something interesting or important together. It's awesome. I can't think of something better to do with my time other than to just continue to work on software that unlocks more and more people's ability to not only be creators and curators of these human systems, but also to be able to participate in not the same cookie cutter kind of experience, but rather these, create their own vibrant Technicolor 3-dimensional worlds, all their own. And because once that starts to happen, all sorts of magic starts to appear in ways that I think we're just at the beginning of. And so that's how I got to here. Like, I love the things that make people unique, and I love the things that make people messy, and I love the things that make people, realize that each and every one of us has agency and the ability to go from point A to point B, however we want to describe it. And the most powerful way to do that is through connecting with other people.
As I listen to you talk, one of the things that I think is interesting is there's
that you didn't know I was a childhood race walker.
Well, obviously that was good. I will work on getting the mental image out later. Right now, what I'm thinking about though is that there's a number of people who are listening going, man, I wish my mom, dad, parents, whatever, would have let me explore my own curiosity to those levels. Maybe, something of that could have happened for me. Or there's an entrepreneur or two who are going, man, I'm interested in this really strange thing over here. And I have been trying to figure out, how do I find other people like me in that regard? And how do we all do those things together? And there are sites like Meetup and what am I thinking? Well, meetup.com, etc. And they've tried those things, and they're probably thinking like, well, what's different? What is Gina talking about? What's so different? Why stop? Ning seemed like it was great. Why do we need something new? Yet another app on my phone. Right.
So I think implicit in that objection, or that sort of like, kind of moment, is this assumption that the way that the internet should work is that anyone should be able to wake up in the morning and be like, I want to go find like X. And if X doesn't exist, or like, then that's everybody else's problem. Like, I guess it just doesn't work. The whole notion of communities doesn't work. So I look at something I look at, community design. I look at just, again, a very specific definition of community, which is bringing people together to master something interesting or important together. So as you can tell, that's not like, let's go, mess around, or just like, hey, like in ways that you can do on Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever. I think the real power of what I'm talking about is when there is a person who is leading the community, They are bringing, I mean, it might even just be like 5 or 10 people. You know, again, we get caught up in this notion that a community equals large numbers, and they don't. But the power of what I'm talking about and what I'm really interested in is not from the member perspective, not from the people who would join up in the community, but from the creator perspective, the person who would curate it, organize it. And it's really an evolution and a refinement of what's going on, I would say, at this intersection of online courses and podcasts and community. And specifically, you know, when you start to think about, when you move from thinking about all of these things as separate pieces to your mission is to create the conditions by which people can master something interesting together, something really cool starts to happen.
And that was the point right there that I was beginning to realize when I was doing some research late last year, etc. And because one of, again, the frustrations that I know either myself or our students have all experienced is simply the fact that they, you know, for the courses, you got to go over here to get answers. You got to go over here because that's where, you know, got to go over the Facebook group for this, and you got to go in all of these different places. Being able to go to one place is by far it's like such a simple idea. It's like,
well, I mean, this is the thing I think so funny about it, which is, you know, there's all of these sort of, you know, first of all, very few people like change, you know, like,
sure.
Like no one really, like, Don't Move My Cheese was like this thing in like the, you know, was like a best-selling book in the 80s, which is, by the way, really fun if somebody's like 25 and in your office to talk about moving, like, oh, I moved your cheese, and they don't understand what you're talking about.
No clue. No
Which
clue.
will also be the case when I mention it right now. There's this thing called Google. Look it up. It's awesome. Anyways, so the thing that I find so fascinating is the number of gymnastics and contortions any of us as creators have to go through to keep our sacred Facebook group, because God knows we couldn't have another login, except that you have another login when you go and put your payment in on a website. Yep. When you then actually get an email triggered to you to sign up for your Teachable or Kajabi account. Right. And then, by the way, you have to go back to Facebook. So now all of a sudden, just to preserve that sense of like, well, everybody's already on Facebook, as creators, we've now created 5 to 6 different things that the person has to go through, as opposed to, if you're starting something from scratch today, what you would say is, okay, here's what I need. I need the ability to market whatever my people are going to master together. Again, and I'm very purposefully saying the mastering something interesting together, because that is ultimately what people want. And why do they want that? It's because they want to get results and transformation in their lives that they cannot get on their own, which is why they pull out their credit card and pay, you know, $999 for an online course or an annual membership. They're paying for that because they want to master something interesting together with other people, whether that's how they progress in their career, how they unlock their unique cash flow business, whether it is to be able to change something about their lifestyle or change something about their daily habits, introduce a new spiritual practice in their lives. All of those things, if people could do it on their own or just from reading a book, they would, but they can't, which is why they're so highly valued and why people will pay a premium for being a part of courses and communities that master something interesting or important together in pursuit of results and transformation in people's lives. And
the fact that the idea and implementation can be so simple is, first of all, genius and amazing. And it also speaks to that you've been through a thing or two in terms of refining this particular concept.
Yeah.
So I have to ask this, because there's a number of entrepreneurs listening who they're more at the beginning stage, or they're at that stage where they've got this inspiration, they've got this idea, they want to move forward, but yet they still feel, we'll call it stuck, afraid. They're looking over the other cliff. They don't know really what's there, and that's prevented them from moving forward. You've crossed the chasm. So I'm curious to hear, what was that journey like, or that first step like, or that time where you realized, like, oh my God, we got to make this work. Because this is my thing, and if it doesn't work, and all of the life stuff that also tugs at every entrepreneur when they're trying to build their business.
Yeah. I think it's a great question. I passionately and fundamentally believe that it's really as simple as taking one or two new risks. Let's just start every week. But if you can take 1 to 2 more risks every day, you progress, or any of us progress so much faster. I'll give you an example. I feel like for a long time in running Mighty Networks, it was just to sort of get to the next milestone. Like, I had a picture of like the product I wanted to build. I had a belief in this market, even though, and by this market, creators, small and medium-sized digital businesses who understand the power of bringing people together and selling digital products and services that allow people to master something interesting together that they couldn't necessarily do on their own. I think the role of curator of people and community builder and designer is actually going to get more important to people's ability to create a passive income. Because while I know that sounds contradictory, because it's like, well, wait a second, if I'm managing the community, isn't that a lot of work? First of all, you can do it from anywhere. And second of all, you actually, like, when you set up the right conditions, you actually aren't actually doing a lot of work. What you're doing is you're providing people another source of value, which is the connections that they are able to make and sort of the journey to master something interesting that you've set up. So I share that just from the perspective of, I knew for a long time that this was a market, even though, where I was sitting in the middle of Silicon Valley, people are like, well, where's the synthetic biology of that? Or like, how are you using AI for this? Or, can you put it in a self-driving car? And the answer is probably yes. I'm not positive, but I knew that I knew this person because I talked to them every day. I get to talk to you. I get to talk to people. And so for me, I would sort of describe the before and after. The before was just getting to this point where we had a product that I thought delivered to this person, this customer, this creator. And as we've now, like, there's still a zillion things we want to do, but now what's really fun is now it's about being on a journey with creators to master this ability to bring people together, lay out a program, whether that's content or courses or just a program, like a series of events, make amazing connections between people such that it gets more valuable. What you're creating, your asset, is creating a network that gets more valuable to everyone with each new person who joins and contributes. To me, that's why I get up every day. And it's now this process of, like, I kind of ask myself every day, like, what's one thing I'm afraid to do? And then I do that thing. And for some weird reason, I don't know what changed, Jay. Like, I used to put things off for multiple days that I was like afraid of like doing. And for me, it's always around like sending somebody an email or like reaching out to somebody proactively. And I started to just say, F it and do it. And the thing that's crazy about it is, like, your hit rate when you do it is only, you're winning at 10%. Like, And by the way, like if you're on the other side of that, being that 10% makes you cool. But anyways, but it's not true for everybody or everything. But basically, once I started to do that, the crazy thing is that it builds on itself. Right. The things that feel scary today stop feeling scary. And then you can actually take on it like a new scary thing. But the more things that you are not afraid of, and, in the world we live in, it, the number one thing is, what if I build something? What if I build a course and nobody comes?
Mm-hmm. Right.
What if I'm too specific in who I serve and it's like, it only gets like 4 people?
Right.
What if everybody's too busy? What if they actually, and core to all of this is, what if they just don't like me? What if I launch something and no one shows up and it triggers this sort of sense of all of us, which is terrified to have a party and have no one come?
Don't have a party at all. That's
so it's like, you know what? Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend all my time planning the perfect party. Correct. As opposed to just having the party and letting there like be spaghetti on the walls and have somebody spill a drink on your couch. And so I don't like the way that I answer that, at least today. Like I woke up this morning and I kind of was mapping out what I was going to do for the day, which is kind of how I start my day. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to send that email. I'm not going to think for 5 days about that email. I'm just going to send it. Still haven't heard back from it. I don't care. It's not the point. The point was that I looked hard at a fear I had, and I just took the step I had control over, and I'm celebrating that. That's the magic. And I don't know if I answered your question, but I did tell you about my day. So
the process that you just elaborated on there is exactly the unique substance that it's difficult to put in a course or put somewhere, but that yet everyone could do that together and celebrate the same win. Now, there's something that you said though there's actually 2 things. That I just want to make sure though, because in my mind, when I look at what you're out there doing and what you're enabling and empowering other entrepreneurs to do, you keep saying digital, but in my head, I don't see how this. I see exactly how, or at least it looks like to me, that it would be just as easy to do this with a physical product, that I don't know, a boutique coffee brand or anything.
Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you though is, where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do, get some of your time back, is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/CashFlowDiary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/CashFlowDiary.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the difference is that, and the reason I distinguish it is it does have to have some element of information or education to it. Not like boring education to it, but like, for example, nobody wakes up in the morning and they're like, you know what I really want to meet are other Coca-Cola drinkers. Like, or the same people that like this sweater I like, I really need to know them. Because there's nothing really deep or interesting or multidimensional to go through together.
Understood. But if we wanted to make our own Coca-Cola together or learn to knit that ugly sweater, then different story.
Then you've got something. And so coffee is really interesting because there is a level of mastery. Like there are people that are.
That's why I was thinking about coffee. Yeah.
And so, the distinction though that I make, and the reason I say digital products or services is because we at Mighty Networks are a platform for being able to create and sell digital services via one-time payments or ongoing subscriptions or memberships that actually can be about events in the real life or memberships in real life as well. So I think it's a really good point. It's the distinction that I made because it's like, again, you can always sell a t-shirt related to that, but it's less about the physical transaction and much more about what are we going to master that's interesting together.
And one of the things that that I'm excited about is specifically when it comes down to using it is that you hit on it because you mentioned about us being able to have a series of events. And one of the advantages of the internet is, yes, connecting with individuals who have high level or specialized knowledge is way easier than it used to be. But yet being able to put that together, or to use a word you would use, to curate all of that information and the people in the same place at the same time is not the easiest task on the planet. And yet it wasn't until I saw what you guys are doing that now this is what we just did, is changed our entire flagship offering over to a 12-month program that we can now do this because it'll be easier for us to put the people and the information in the same spot, one spot all the time, not have to fill up their email boxes with information over and over.
This is the thing I think is so interesting. Sorry, go ahead. I want
to hear that, but I'm also curious because I've learned one thing to be very, very true. As the entrepreneur, when I'm thinking of a product or a service, how I see it is one thing. How my customers end up using it is a completely different thing. And I'm just curious, has that happened yet? Are the creators using it in the way that you thought, or has that changed already?
So I think that the two things are related. So I'll answer the first and then so the thing that's so fascinating to me is that the way that this market for sending people a zillion emails, having to have your courses on one platform, your sort of membership site on a different platform, the fact that we use services like Zapier to make them all talk to each other, and then people have to be on one platform. So people are on Facebook, and then anything else that you want to do has to be done in all of these other places, and we have to again contort ourselves. So there's nothing in the law of physics. There's nothing in there's nothing in any sort of decree. It's not the law that has to be the way that it's done. And in fact, if anything, one of the benefits of being super old, apparently, is that I remember a time and a place where that wasn't the case. I do not accept that people need to be on one platform. And by the way, people are the most valuable, which is why Facebook's able to generate $55 billion in advertising revenue a year, is because people are the most valuable thing. So why, as creators, are we basically saying, oh, well, people have to be on this platform and we have to make our members and ourselves do all these other things to contort ourselves just so we don't touch that piece? When increasingly people are like, I don't really want to be on Facebook. Right. So a better approach is to say, okay, I want to create the world's best place for people to be able to master this particular topic together. And to do that, I need content.
Yep.
I need, I need people. I need the right people. Yep. I need the right people to be able to talk to each other about the content.
Yes.
And by putting it together all in one place, I'm going to actually create something where 1 + 1 + 1 = 10.
Correct.
And that doesn't mean there won't be growing pains. That doesn't mean there won't be but wait a second, on Facebook it does this. But when you start to think about the time that you now get to invest into making this world, that your own little world, perfect and awesome. And I shouldn't say perfect after especially like complaining about perfect earlier today as being the enemy of the good and done. But basically, like, there's so many cool things to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of one answer. And then to answer your question of are people using it the way that we thought? So we did not realize that we never thought we were going to, like when we started Mighty Networks, we never thought we were going to build online courses into a Mighty Network. That completely came from our customers, our hosts.
That's awesome.
So hosts literally started showing up like 2.5 years ago, and they're like, yeah, this is great, except could you have online courses in it? And we're like, what? Like, what are online courses? Why would we do it?
What do you want that for? Yeah.
Like, okay, I mean, I guess. And so we started down our own path to look at like online courses. And then we realized, we're like, oh, shoot, this is part of mastering something interesting together.
Yeah.
But we didn't even realize that like, we didn't even put those words to it until like maybe 8 months ago. Yeah. And then, so then we spend 8 months building online courses into a Mighty Network. And we're like, all right, giving ourselves some high fives. And they're like, yeah, that's great. But we're going to need to charge for all of these different pieces. Yeah. And so then we're like, oh, okay, so this is another way. So it wouldn't have even been good enough for us to, like, we had like a way that you could like charge for membership. But no, we actually needed to build a highly flexible payment engine that would allow somebody to offer a paid course, a paid one-time course, a paid subscription to course, a subscription to like a bundle of courses, or we also have groups within a Mighty Network. So the ability to charge from membership into a mastermind group or mastermind groups, or a combination of a course and a mastermind group, and also within a Mighty Network, and like to be able to do all of those different things.
Yep.
And to still be able to do that on every platform, because I mean, what we know that other folks, again, who are living in that world of my Facebook group is sacred, but I'm going to do all these other things, is that the way you actually get people to really engage is to have your own apps, or at least have access to the Mighty Networks apps for courses, for those mastermind groups, for all of that stuff. So then we had to like do all this stuff so it works on a native mobile app experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so that was another that was another 6 months of work. And so the platform as it exists today, like I mean, we're pretty smart, but we completely have co-created this with the people who are hosting Mighty Networks and the people who are using that they've brought to these Mighty Networks. And so, again, I'd love to take credit for being some genius, but I'm not. Like what I think I do, and I think what any, superhero has to do today is like, you got to have some serious ears on you, like extra large ears. And again, the ability to focus, to just even know, what you're going to co-create with your customers.
But then you went the extra mile, because see, oftentimes we can have an idea, we maybe even ran the survey, but then when you get the information back and you go, oh, do they know how much work that is?
And by the way, the answer is no.
What's that?
The answer is no.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they never know.
All the stuff that I just talked about, and they're like, yeah, but we're going to need to see that in British pounds and Canadian dollars.
Exactly.
And you're just like, oh, dude.
You're like, but can we celebrate this? I just did this. Yeah, no.
And by the way, for those who are looking for being able to offer your courses in British pounds, we do plan on doing it a little bit later this year. But anyways, keep going.
No, totally understood. And that's part of the thing is taking the tact and understanding that it's an evolutionary process. It's a constant moving process. You're not necessarily really done, which is also true for a lot of the things that we want to master. We're not ever really necessarily done. There's always another level, a next step, a way to get better at what you're always doing. And one of the things, at least, that has made the largest difference for me is being able and having access to individuals who are willing to share so that I can learn from a completely different perspective, because that's by far the most valuable thing that you could never bottle. And one of the things, and you kind of hit on it, that hampers that sometimes is the fact that you can have a Facebook group or whatever, but just because you make the post doesn't mean that the other person who might have benefited from that post even sees the message. And I think, as an entrepreneur, we need to all hear how you're looking at this and how we can apply that to be able to help each of our own products and services continue to flourish.
Yeah. So, Facebook was not built for people to master something interesting together.
I'm beginning to wonder if it was built for us even to talk to each other, but
not really, actually. I mean, not really. And at this point, it's really built to keep you there as long as possible and interact with the things that have the highest intensity to them, which tend to be things that are about outrage, things that are about offense, things that are about, the people who are closest to you. And when you think about the interaction model on Facebook for a Facebook group, it's one post chosen by Facebook that is whizzing by your feed.
Yep.
Now, that is the equivalent of going to a retreat to focus on the things that you care about in the middle of Times Square. Yes. So it's not going to help you or your people that you're trying to bring on a journey to master something interesting to try to do that in these 3-second bites. The other thing about it is it means that you don't ever get a holistic sense of the groups that you're in. They're really designed for, fellow fans of the LA Clippers, or they're designed for those sort of big interests that sort of broad-based, very light touch. Great for that. It's terrible for somebody who has paid money because they cannot get results and transformation on their own to actually meet and build relationships with the people that are going to bring your program or your ideas or your workshop or your framework to life. And let's not even mention the fact that as a group admin, maybe 3% of your posts are even seen by your members. You have no control over it.
Right.
But the real tragedy of a Facebook group is people don't actually get to meet each other. You're not going to make friends with somebody, from a 6-point font comment. You're just not, and you can't really see who they are. And look, they're trying to do some great things, but fundamentally, they don't believe that the group is the person who's organized the group. That's why they show ads for all the other competitive groups every time you're on your desktop in a Facebook group. They really don't care if somebody interacts with your group or those competitive groups or their family or, political discussions. They don't care. That's very different than the person who's going to pay you $1,000 a year because they are desperate to meet people and have a systematic program for being able to really master something together with other people who care. And I would go as far as to say the power of creators and folks like you today is that in a day and an age where everybody feels a little bit more isolated and a little bit more alone, creators are the answer to how people start to build relationships with each other again. Because if we both like you and we both show up to a group coaching session or into a community, now I'm meeting people in the context of we have a shared language.
Yep.
We've raised our hand and we have a shared goal related to building our own cash flow businesses.
Yep.
We have you that, you have the confidence because you're passionate about this topic to bring those people together.
Yep.
And everybody gets off that call, or like when they're in that, then when they're in that community and get a little hit of that community,
yep,
everybody feels a little bit more connected.
It's been one of the greatest things that I think, well, one, found, and then two, watching the new individuals as they're being, as we begin to open up the platform, etc., hearing their response and what they're excited about how some of the same frustrations I had, they not only have, but just how much easier it is for them to talk to each other. And that was probably the most challenging part. Is it can feel like a lot of work if it's all one-way communication, me to them or them to me, but when we can facilitate them talking to each other and make that easy, it's by far one of the best things ever. Now, for those that have listened this far and are excited about everything that we've talked about, probably want to find out more, understand what Mighty Networks is up to, what's going to be the best way for them to stalk you online. Yeah, we'll say it.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. So certainly going to mightynetworks.com. The thing that, as we've been talking, Jay, that I would love to invite people to do is join us for our community design masterclass. Yes. It's not just a great way to get the tools to do this, even before you need or want the software. Yep. Our promise with it is that, you'll learn how to create and design a community so valuable you can charge for it. And so, well organized that it essentially runs itself for all the reasons that we've been talking about. And it's also really fun. So that is on our website. It will go to sort of the next, the next cohort. We run these live, which we think is pretty special and is a great way to get started. If you have never run an online course before, but you're kind of curious about it, you can see how we've actually launched it. And it's really, accessible and easy for folks to do. And
love it. Now, as we wind down, I've got a final question for you because your answer is probably going to be very unique. Okay. And I want to hear it, because there's a number of people that they're at various stages of their entrepreneurial journey right now. And you have the benefit of wisdom, and because you've been down many different places and you've seen experience highs and lows, they're at that place that I like to call the precipice of decision, where it's like, okay, now what I'm going to do, because they started this episode today in one spot and now they're at another spot. And like I know, as humans, when we're confronted with something that's new but powerful, something that's exciting but we're unsure, we often have that voice, that companion in the back of our head that says, are you're gonna run no one's gonna follow, no one, I don't know about you, do you remember what happened last time? And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time they're gonna do exactly what you say, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
Number one thing, if anything is on of this call or this podcast has been interesting, it's to join us for community design. And here's why I say that. Because it's a community. Mm-hmm. Like, we've just spent the last however long talking about community, but experience it. Like, let us show you in practice what it means to be a part of a community, mastering something interesting together as part of a course, community combined in the same place. That's all you have to do. And there's something really pretty special about it. And I'll share one person's story that, because I was just really excited. I was talking to him this morning, but there is a creator on Mighty Networks named Martinez Evans. He's got the Slow AF Run Club. And his Instagram handle is 300 pounds and running, and it's awesome. And, he followed the gurus. Like, before I met him, he had taken B school. He had, he had taken Amy Porterfield's class. He had read every one of Pat Flynn's books. And he spent 6 months organizing and trying to put together, his online course. He researched all the software. He made the videos, and just following the instructions step by step, he got 2 people to sign up. Spent $5,000 on Facebook ads, got 2 people to sign up. And about 2 weeks in, one of them asked for a refund. And he could have stopped at that point. He could have given up. He could have said, I guess people don't actually want information or programs related to running if they're out of shape or they're, heavier. I should just pack up and go home. And he didn't. And, through a crazy set of events, I met him and started talking to him about Mighty Networks. And he took our community design masterclass. He created his Mighty Network. He launched it. He experimented with different, and first of all, he had over 100 people right away. So now he basically was like, well, what would people want from me in terms of programs? And it was all around sort of, their psychology and the psychology of winning and the psychology of distance athletes. And they were willing to pay money. And now all of a sudden it's like, wait a second. And he just launched his own apps on sort of our fancy version. He's already over doubled his membership in a few days. And it just speaks to, now he's got other, big brands have come calling, and he's got global partnerships. He's going to take over the world. and it's the difference between, following the gurus and focusing in on content versus knowing that what you're really doing is building a community. Even with an online course that's successful, every single online course that's successful is building a community of people that are mastering something interesting together. And I just share that story because the gurus aren't always right. Things are changing. And when you put people first and you experiment with where the world is going as opposed to, operating from a place of fear, you can be like Martinez, and he had every right in the world to crawl up into, his couch. And he didn't, and he chose to look at it as a learning opportunity. And that simple decision brought him on a journey to something that is really special and something that I wake up every day thinking about.
Awesome. I definitely want to say I appreciate, not obviously your curiosity has led you here, but your courage, your discipline, tenacity, passion, all of these things are what it takes to continue, especially doing what you're doing when you're trying to empower others to actually have their own agency and go out there and make the difference that we want to. And I just want to be the first to say thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the CashFlow Diary.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? Get over to MightyNetworks.com. If you are hearing in between the lines that there might be some changes on the CashFlow Diary side of things, then you are hearing correctly. But get over there. Find out what community design actually means, give it a test drive, and then come find us too. At the end of the day, guys, here's what it is. Our job, what we are here to do, is to turn you into a bigger, better, badder entrepreneur in a shorter time than you think is possible so that you can begin to do the things that actually matter. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.